Caught my husband having an inappropriate relationship with my niece, who I helped raise, and now my family is in chaos and ruins. For more than a year now, I've watched my 23-year-old niece, my brother's daughter, cast lingering, almost admiring glances at my husband, who's 40. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination, telling myself I was crazy for even thinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She's always been outspoken about her admiration for him. I tried to ignore it, mostly because my husband never gave me any reason to be suspicious. Sometimes I think maybe it's because her own father has been such a disaster, a loser, to be blunt. He drinks, he gambles, and is unemployed more often than not. My husband is the one who picks him up from the hospital, pays for his liver medications, and tries to keep him afloat. I remember back when my niece was just a child, left behind by her mother, who vanished with another man and abandoned her to my brother. I was the one to step in, cook for her, get her ready for school. In so many ways, I was her mother when she didn't have one. Maybe that's why she looks up to my husband, who is everything her father isn't. He takes care of himself, runs a successful business with 45 employees, and always presents himself impeccably. She even told me she's learned more about how business works from him than anyone else. But the day the line was crossed is seared in my mind. She insisted on ironing his suit. He's always in suits and ties, and she needed, to prepare it for him. I was distracted at the time, completely overwhelmed with my 7-year-old daughter, who was struggling to adjust to her new school. I let it go, told myself Anastasia was just trying to be helpful. She even cooked for us, but only what he liked to eat, never what the family wanted, always focusing on him. Then, 3 days ago, I found out the unthinkable. While I was away on a business trip, my husband had slept with her. I had left my daughter in their care, but he apparently took her to my mother's house. I found out via an anonymous text, which turned out to be from one of Anastasia's friends. At first, I hoped it was some cruel joke. But when I confronted him, he broke down in apologies and explanations, telling me it only happened once, that they'd had wine and, well, it happened. I feel lost, betrayed, and I don't even know where to begin. Another thing that keeps running through my mind is that I don't really think he groomed her, because this isn't the first time she's had an affair with a married man. Last year, she did the same thing with another man, one with high social status and in the military. Back then, I sat her down to talk, thinking I could guide her, but she was downright proud of it. She didn't want love, just the thrill of sleeping with a powerful man. It's her thing, I guess. She idolizes authority, looks down on guys her own age. Unlike a lot of women her age who want to be independent and strong, Anastasia prefers to play up her beauty and femininity, always acting soft-spoken and good girl. She refuses to go clubbing or get a driver's license because she thinks driving is too masculine. She knows she's beautiful and plays that card with a deliberate, almost chilling calculation. But my heartache isn't just about my husband. What hurts most is that I helped raise this child. I was a mother figure to her. I cooked for her, helped with homework, got her ready for school. I gave her a home when no one else did. And now, as if the revelations couldn't get any worse, my mother tried to talk sense into her again, but Anastasia exploded. She told my mother she's hated me for years, that I have everything handed to me, that I never had to struggle, that while her mother left her and she was mocked in school for her drunk of a father, I had the perfect life. A perfect career. A perfect husband. She'd been envious and resentful, while I was admired and she was pitied. When I finally had to return home, for the sake of my own daughter, because not allowing her to see her father would affect me in court, I found chaos. My bedroom was in shambles. My husband and mother were trying to clean up. Anastasia had thrown all my clothes out of the closet in an attempt to take over the space herself. My mother told me that when my husband tried to stop her, Anastasia lashed out violently, and he had to physically restrain her to stop her from scratching and kicking. My mother confirmed Anastasia actually attacked her, too. In the end, it escalated so much that my husband called a doctor to administer a sedative, which finally calmed her down. Now, all that's left are the ruins. My husband, always so arrogant and confident in the past, now begs me for forgiveness, looking more broken than I've ever seen him. My mother weeps and confides in me that Anastasia has attacked her before, but she never told me because she thought the girl had suffered enough already, and didn't want to risk ruining her future with a police record. As for my brother, he remains the same feckless, selfish man he's always been. He had the gall to ask my husband if this mess means he'll be getting more money out of it, almost as if he'd be willing to prostitute his own daughter for cash. I'm so tired. All I want now is to cut ties with every one of them. After all I did, after all I gave, this is what's left. Just echoes, betrayal, and a desperate urge for solitude. Update 1. 3 days had passed since I shared my story, and so much was still swirling in my mind. I finally sat down and had a real talk with my husband. He looked me in the eye and told me he hadn't realized how unstable she actually was. That's supposed to make it better? So, he slept with her because he believed she was stable? How exactly does that help anything? She wants him, that much is clear. After I blocked her number, she still managed to text me from some new one, and I blocked that too. Her messages were insane. She ranted about how everyone calls her crazy, but it's the crazy that makes sex interesting and that he would come back for more. I still can't believe this is my niece. She wrote that she deserves him more than I do, that I'm unworthy of a man like him, and that I deserve someone just like her father. My mother is trapped in this horribly sensitive position. She told me that my niece became hysterical with both her and my husband. Neither of them wanted to call the police, too many questions would follow about what really happened. My husband is terrified his associates would find out, and my mother, well, she still sees her as her granddaughter and just wants to protect her, even when it's clear something's terribly wrong. That led to the moment I never expected. My husband ended up slapping her, hard enough to throw her to the floor. As awful as it is, it actually calmed her down because she got scared and started shielding her face. He told her if she didn't leave our house, he would slap her again. According to my mother, only the threat of physical violence made her finally back down. Meanwhile, my brother just keeps drinking like nothing that happens in this family matters anymore. In a sick, twisted way, he even asked my husband for more money, almost like he wanted to milk the situation. Not as in, because you hurt my daughter, but more like, well, you got to have sex with my daughter, so pay up. I don't have concrete proof for any of this, but that's the vibe he gives off. Sometimes I speculate, did my brother know what she's been doing all along? My mother. I know she didn't know. She's broken-hearted because of her son's failures, but she's always been honest with me about everything. While I was away, hiding out in a hotel, I finally called my husband and demanded he tell me everything. I told him I might be willing to believe they only slept together once, but I wasn't naive enough to think there hadn't been anything before that. After struggling, he admitted, backed up by messages and screenshots he showed me, that she'd spent the night in our house 2 months ago while I was away. She texted him in the middle of the night, saying her father had thrown her out after an argument and shoved her against a wall. She begged him to let her stay. According to the texts, he went to pick her up and brought her home. We have 3 empty rooms, he insisted she slept in one, but there's no way to actually prove what happened that night. He swore nothing physical happened. He claimed that they drank together in the kitchen until 4 in the morning, talking about her father. She told him she wished her father was more like him, a moment he took for flattery, not seduction. Then he said he went to bed. Some people have tried to blame me for not protecting her from him when she was a teen, accusing me of letting him eye her. Where does this even come from? I will not forgive him for this. I am not going to just let this go or not get a divorce. All I want is for people to let me feel my pain without being accused of losing my mind. Right now, his cheating is not even my biggest concern. This all began, this nightmare, when I first discovered their affair. The betrayal is corrosive, but it doesn't compare to how devastated I am by my niece's words and actions. This was the girl I loved more than anything. I cherished her as if she were my own. Now I know she not only wanted my husband, but also despises me. From the bottom of her heart, she hates me, and I never even suspected it. She also detests my daughter, who simply adores her. I thought that adoration was mutual. They spent so much time together, with my niece playing with her for hours. But now I know she's disgusted by me. No one can grasp how awful this feels. My mother hid from me just how unstable my niece was, and never told me about the things that girl had been saying about me. My husband's infidelity hurts. His betrayal is a knife in my heart. But people never ask about our marriage, about how close we were, about what he really meant to me. The truth is, I loved her more. Even after my husband cheated the first time, a big part of my love for him died. We stayed together for our child, not the perfect solution, but it worked, somehow. I still cared for him, though nothing like before. But my love for my niece was greater, and this, learning not only about the affair but hearing from her own mouth how she truly feels about me, is worse than anything else. Update 2. I played a major role in raising my niece, Anastasia, who is now 24. Her mother left her for another man when she was young, and her father, my brother, was a lifelong alcoholic who often neglected and sometimes physically hurt her. When I married Ivan, Anastasia was 16, and finally, there was a man in the family who could stand up to her father and bring some order to the chaos. Ivan was everything her father was not. He had pulled himself up from poverty, built a successful business with nearly 50 employees, took care of his appearance, exuded confidence, and was a caring, responsible father to our own young daughter. Anastasia absolutely adored him. Whenever Anastasia found herself in trouble, like the nights when she called terrified because her father's drunken friends were over, Ivan would never hesitate. He would get out of bed, drive over, and bring her to our home, making her feel safe. She idolized him openly, talking about how much she admired him for being the man her own father never was. But Ivan and my brother had always clashed. Ivan was exhausted from picking my brother up from the hospital, paying for his endless liver treatments, and even taking on the burden of financially supporting my mother. He cheated on me several times, but regardless of that pain, I always felt a sense of security with him, a feeling that at least he kept the family chaos in check. Then my entire world imploded. It came to light that Ivan and Anastasia had been having an affair for over a year, right under my nose. Sometimes it was after or even before family dinners, other times, whenever I wasn't around. Anastasia changed, or maybe she just revealed her true self. She confessed to me that she wanted Ivan for herself. Told me she deserved him more than I did. I divorced him swiftly, but he and my niece started dating officially before the ink was even dry on our divorce papers. To make everything more surreal, my brother died during this mess, and in desperation, he He tried to beg Ivan for money one last time. The relationship between Ivan and Anastasia didn't last long. Ivan began drinking heavily himself, would break down crying in front of our daughter, and started to blame Anastasia for destroying his marriage. He even became violent toward her. Anastasia was still obsessed with him, but eventually she left. She's always been stunningly beautiful and quickly found someone else. Ivan, still desperate, tried harder to win her back than he ever did with me. My therapist helped me see the ugly truth. What they had together was mostly about sexual fantasy and gratification. I tormented myself with self-blame. 1 year later, all three of us are single. Anastasia reached out to apologize, but even though I still love her, I truly do, I can't forgive her, and I don't want her in my life. She finally saw Ivan's true nature and now she is completely alone. No friends, no family, not even me. Sometimes she tries to reach me, just texting, usually when she's crying about being alone. Ivan is out dating women 20 years younger while I continue therapy, build my career, and focus on raising my daughter Maggie. But the betrayals ran even deeper. I discovered that my mother and my brother had known about Ivan's affair with Anastasia from the start. They never said a word, maybe out of fear of what would eventually happen, divorce and the end of Ivan's support for them. It became horrifyingly clear that they had betrayed Anastasia too. They were willing to turn a blind eye, almost pimping her out to keep the money and stability flowing. Ivan used to visit my mother's house, where Anastasia also had her own room. My mother admitted that Ivan would see Anastasia privately for a few minutes on these visits. Nothing sexual may have happened during those times, but it was more than inappropriate, and they still kept it secret from me. Despite everything, I can't deny, I still love Ivan, and I still love Anastasia. But I have learned to live without them. Ivan, for his part, is desperate to get Anastasia back. He went so far as to buy her a necklace worth 2 months of my salary. She refused it. Ivan always had women fawning over him. It's not just the money, it's his arrogant, narcissistic, but somehow magnetic aura. He's cold, detached, but so charismatic, and plenty of women, including me and my niece, were fooled into confusing that coldness for confidence. But now that it's clear he wants her more than he ever wanted me, I have to accept it and find my own sense of peace. They're still occasionally hooking up, from what I've been told. When Anastasia reaches out now, it's usually while she's weeping that she has no one. She blames Ivan for poisoning her against me, for manipulating her by telling her for years that I saw her as a burden, that only he could really take care of her. Ivan and she are still in touch. He even took her away for the weekend not long ago, as I heard from a friend who witnessed them acting like a couple. I keep my distance from both of them. Only a few mutual friends remain, friends I suspect didn't know about their affair. My work is going well, even though we're all anxious about AI slowly taking over our roles. No one knows what the future holds. To keep myself grounded, I joined a book club. Thinking back on Anastasia, I remember she was always unreliable, a pathological liar, maybe just manipulative. That weekend away with Ivan happened 2 months ago, and I haven't heard anything new. The last time Anastasia contacted me was 3 weeks ago, and she didn't mention it. Ivan isn't really dating now, just messing around. No matter what, I would never take Anastasia back, not even considering the affair. There's so much more to what she did. She told me and texted me things so painful I can barely recount them. She said she hated me and my daughter. I can understand how her terrible upbringing shaped her, but it doesn't excuse what she did. My mother had always criticized Anastasia, compared her cruelly to my daughter and myself. Anastasia was curvy and tall, always beautiful, but my mother would body shame her, calling her a slut and telling her to lose weight even though she was never overweight, just chest heavy with thicker legs. Anastasia wanted to be skinny like me, but my mother tore her apart for it. At first, she seemed ashamed of her body, but eventually she realized the power it gave her, in particular, the power it had over Ivan. I look back and remember how she'd ask in front of him if she needed a bigger bra, making a show of it, claiming she thought she needed a double D now, drawing attention not just from me but also from Ivan, who was always there in the room. She'd come out of the bathroom in only a towel or her underwear around Ivan, acting like she didn't know he was home. She later admitted to me that she'd been trying to get Ivan into her bed for a long time. And it wasn't just Ivan. Anastasia had a pattern. She flirted and manipulated her cousin's boyfriend, someone she didn't even like, and got herself a job at the same company he worked for so she could be near him. Some things I don't even want to remember anymore. I have to admit, I was wrong when I insisted he never manipulated her. Now, looking back, I realize he absolutely did. He told her that I didn't love her, that I considered her a burden. It wasn't that I never confided in him, when we were alone, about being overwhelmed and that things would be easier if her parents were involved. But my priority was always my daughter. Yet he twisted my words, telling her that I said she was a burden, that all I cared about was my own child. That wasn't true, but it was what she believed after hearing it from him. One of the main reasons I didn't divorce him, even after I found out he was cheating, was because of Anastasia. My brother and his friends were truly dangerous for her. There were incidents, some of them even touched her and tried to sexually assault her. We did notify the authorities, but I'm just a woman, and my mother is an older woman. We needed a man's presence to take care of things at home. There were nights when Anastasia would call me at 1 in the morning, panicked and begging for someone to pick her up because one of those men was following her around the house. Ivan made sure she had a lock installed on her door, but that didn't erase the threat. It was never a safe situation. So he'd head out in the middle of the night and bring her to stay with us. He was the one who stood up to my brother when he was physically abusive towards her. Having a man there to protect her, to escort her to safety, it was just more effective. I can't lie, I would have been afraid to do it on my own. Update 3. It started at 2:21 in the morning with a number I didn't recognize and a voice too polite for the hour. They had found my name as an emergency contact on an old school form, her old school, from years ago. Anastasia was in the ER. I got dressed like a sleepwalker, put my hair in a knot I didn't even secure properly, and drove through empty streets that looked like paper cutouts of a city, flat, silent, almost pretend. I wasn't prepared for the look of her. She had lost so much weight the roundness in her cheeks was gone and there was a small bruise blooming along the edge of her jaw, yellowing at the edges. The nurse asked if I was her mother and I said yes without thinking, then corrected myself and heard how brittle it sounded. When the doctor stepped away, she stared at the blanket and spoke into it. I didn't think you'd come. I told her I didn't come for a speech, and I wasn't taking her home. She nodded like she already knew. There's a way she holds her shoulders when she's bracing. I remember it from when she was a lanky 12-year-old trying to pretend she didn't cry about the way the girls snickered at her shoes. A social worker materialized with forms and soft questions. There was a small pause, and then something else landed between us like a stone dropped in a basin. She was 9 weeks pregnant. She didn't look at me. She didn't say Ivan's name. Her mouth twitched like it would form it and then she swallowed. She said it wasn't him. I know how easily she lies, and I know how sometimes she chooses honesty like it's an event, a party she doesn't often attend but can make an appearance at when it suits her. I didn't press. I asked when she had eaten last. I bought her a sandwich from one of those machines that never has changed. She tore it into small pieces and played with the wrapper. I stayed until the sun stained the windows a pale peach. I didn't hold her hand, but I dragged a chair close enough that our elbows almost touched. She didn't ask me to bring her home, and I didn't offer. The social worker rattled off names of shelters and safe houses that don't advertise themselves, and I handed over my card to pay for a taxi because I could hear my mother's voice telling me to just let the hospital handle it, and I couldn't bear sounding like her. When she stood to leave, she hugged me with a surprising, messy force that pressed her forehead into my shoulder and left a damp circle on my shirt. "Don't tell him," she whispered. I didn't ask which him she meant. 2 days later, Maggie had her piano recital. It was the sort of optimistic school thing where tiny hands in patent leather shoes bang out Chopin as if he were made of tin. I had this small, strange pride I haven't felt in years just watching her trot on stage, hair clipped crooked, and then Ivan appeared, late, cologne punching through a haze of whiskey. He leaned against the doorway like he was arriving at a party everyone had been waiting for, his tie loosened, clapping 2 beats behind because he couldn't find the rhythm. The teacher's smile faltered. Maggie saw him from the stage and froze on a note. My chest made a hollow sound. I met him in the hallway where the old concert posters curl at the corners and told him to leave. He tried to put his arms around me like that would make anyone in that school forget he was swaying. I said, "Ivan, go." For a second, I saw something mean, like a dog with a bone, flash across his face. He left because the headmistress walked up next to me and stopped being polite. I filed for an emergency modification the next morning. No drama in the paperwork, just dull facts. He had shown up impaired at a school event. He had been crying in front of our daughter. He was unstable. The judge had that weary patience of people who spend their lives picking up after other adults. SoberLink with daily testing. Supervised visits only, at a center with the cheery mural of a smiling sun painted over chipped walls. He blew a fail a week later, 10:07 a.m. on a Wednesday. He called my phone 13 times that afternoon, first angry, then weeping, then angry again, then the quiet voice he uses when he wants to sound reasonable, as if he's selling me something and the product is me forgetting how to count. His business started shedding its sheen. Contracts fell out from under him with that slippery speed of men jumping from a burning boat. One of his managers, she's 26 and for a brief, awkward period used to come to my house to talk about HR issues over coffee, sent me a message by mistake meant for someone else. "Payroll will be late again." I didn't reply. I saw his couch on Marketplace listed by John for half of what it had cost and recognized the indented shape of his favorite nap spot. He posted a story with a glossy white Range Rover and a caption about new beginnings, and then a friend told me he was living in a serviced apartment with a fridge that hums like it's dying. He was pulled over on a Friday night. Not a dramatic chase, just a simple, humiliating stop. He called me from the number the station uses, and for a second my hand moved on its own to answer because old reflexes are like vines. You rip them down from the trellis and they still reach for light. I let it ring out and shook so hard my key fell between the car seat and the console and I had to fish it out with 2 fingers pressed into a stale French fry. While all this was rolling around me, my mother had a small stroke. Of course she did. The left side of her mouth refused to cooperate, and her words came out like stones in her throat. I sat in the hospital again, fluorescent lights painting everyone in that washed-out funeral color, and watched a nurse with neat nails stroke my mother's hand while my mother asked, quite clearly, "Where's Anastasia?" in that thin voice that made me almost nostalgic for the sharp, judgmental one. I said, "Rest." She lifted her good hand and made the sign of the cross in the air like she was warding off all our sins and then shut her eyes as if she were bored of us. Anastasia slid in that evening carrying a plastic bag of tangerines, her wrists thin as twigs, hair in a braid like a child's. She stood at the edge of the bed and looked at my mother as if she was both angel and jailer. My mother opened her eyes and said, "My girl," and for a moment it looked like forgiveness could be generosity instead of capitulation. Then the silence settled and they both remembered who they were to each other. A week after the ER, Anastasia called and asked me to go with her to the clinic. Not because she needed me specifically, she said, but because she didn't want to go alone. I told her I would drive, I wouldn't stay, and I wouldn't take her home afterward. She said, "Okay," as if boundaries were a new language she was willing to learn. The waiting room was an odd orchestra, the rustle of pamphlets, the click of a receptionist's acrylic nails, the sniffles of a girl who looked about 19 wearing a sweatshirt that swallowed her whole. Anastasia folded into herself and only unfolded to squeeze my fingers once, so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. We didn't say his name. We didn't say any names. I paid at the little window because she had no card, and I hated how ordinary the receipt looked, how it made something difficult look like a grocery list. When she came out, her face was drained and calm, like the surface of a pond after someone has thrown a chair in and the ripples finally die down. I dropped her outside a shelter a social worker had found, unmarked door, a bell you had to ring twice, a woman inside with tired kindness, and when she turned to go, she said, "Thank you, Auntie," in that careful way that made me remember she used to say Auntie please when she was 5 and wanted a second bowl of soup. I sat in the car and cried the kind of tears that feel like your organs are rearranging. Maggie asked me 2 nights later if her father was sick. I told her he was in a program to help him make better choices. She wanted to know if he would be at her soccer practice. I told her no. She said, "Is Auntie Anastasia dead?" And I almost laughed because the child part of me still thinks it would be easier if people could just die instead of having to hold their wreckage and continue. I told her no, she wasn't dead, she was getting some help too. She looked at me and asked if help means you stop doing bad things. I told her I hoped so. She made a drawing for both of them, one page with 2 triangles for houses connected by a crooked path and a giant green tree in the middle, labeled my home. I stuck it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a peach. The woman Ivan took to that hotel 2 months back, the one a friend saw with him, sent me a message out of nowhere. I don't know how she found me. She said she thought she should let me know Ivan had been seeing her around the same time he took Anastasia away for that weekend. She said she was late. She sent screenshots because that is the currency of our times, text after text with his name stacked like poorly built blocks. He had told her she reminded him of when he was young, that he wanted to take care of her. It was like reading an old script he didn't bother to change the names in. I didn't reply. I watched the 3 little dots appear and vanish and thought about how many women have learned to live on crumbs. I knew the old patterns were trying to form themselves again when my mother called and told me I needed to bring money for her caretaker's second week because Ivan always handled this before. I said, "Ivan isn't here." She said, with that stroked warped mouth still able to curl into disdain, "Then you must." I paid because I won't let a woman who birthed me lie in a hospital with someone underpaid and furious at the world. But I found a subsidized option and filled out the forms myself, learned about waitlists, learned what dignity means when it's measured in hours someone can help you into the shower. Anastasia has, for now, complied with every boundary I set like she's touching a fence and testing if it's electrified. She hasn't come to my house. She hasn't called in the middle of the night. She sent one message last week, "I started therapy." No flourish. No drama. She told me the counselor's name without me asking, as if the specificity would make it more real. Then, in the same breath, she told me she had dreams that she was standing in my kitchen and I asked her if she wanted tea and everything smelled like cinnamon and light. I didn't answer. I don't owe anyone my kitchen. But I read her words 3 times. Ivan tried again, of course. He sent Maggie a letter with a drawing of a bear and a fish. Inside there was a necklace, thin gold, delicate, the sort of thing he buys to telegraph tenderness. I put it away in a drawer because gifts to a child are not apologies and I won't let her carry his guilt around her neck. He left me a bouquet of white roses at my door like I was a mistress he was trying to charm. I put them in the trash and took out the bag immediately because I didn't want the smell in my house. There was one more thing I haven't found a place for yet. The police called me back about a report I filed months ago, when I found out certain forms had my signature from years after I would have signed them. It turns out one of Ivan's old loans had a renewal with my name on it. Not enough to ruin me, our divorce papers were drawn up too carefully for that, but enough to need a meeting with a detective who wore a tie he probably thought looked friendly. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said I wanted to go home. Afterward I sat in my car and counted my breaths to 5 and thought about how the word forgery feels like a bad joke when the real theft has been time, self-respect, the quiet Sundays I used to think we'd have when we were old. I told the detective I'd think about it. I'm still thinking. I changed the locks last week even though no one has a key. It was for me, not for the door. I sold the bed and bought a simpler one, made of pale wood with straight lines. I planted rosemary in a chipped pot on the windowsill and the whole kitchen smells like something living when the sun hits it. I saved up and bought a second-hand upright piano for Maggie, one with a scar down its side as if it had been wounded and healed. She learned how to play scales and I learned how to sit with a book and not check my phone every 3 seconds. This morning, as I left for work, the sky had that hard blue that happens only in winter. The hallway light flickered and for a second, I saw her, in my mind, of course, 16, hair in a ponytail, cheeks flushed from running up the stairs, all long limbs and awkward grace, throwing her backpack down, calling my name to show me a poem she had written about a house by a lake and a woman in a red coat who never turned around. I stood there with my keys in my hand and decided I still refuse to be the woman who doesn't turn around. But I also refuse to open the door to anyone who hasn't learned not to break everything they touch. I don't know where any of this is going. Maybe that's the point. For once there isn't a plan or a rescue or a crisis I'm supposed to manage like a small, miserable company. There's just a clean counter, a child who laughs when her shoe squeaks, a mother who says my name like she's remembering why she chose it, a girl I love who's trying, maybe for the first time, to stand up in her own life without using someone else's shoulders. And there's me, learning to tolerate the sound of my own quiet.